Welcome back to the Star Trek Critic, where we take each episode and treat it as a school project, starting with a score of 100 points, then take 1 point away for each error, plot holes, continuity errors, set problems, and anything else I can think of, just to rip the show to shreds. Today's episode is By Any Other Name. A group of aliens from the Andromeda Galaxy leave their dying world to find a new planet to conquer. As usual, the first point is lost for the captain and first officer beaming down together. They should never do that. Look quick, it's a woman in a red shirt.
Yes!
Here come the bad guys. Wait, is he checking her out? This is a great example of first contact going dead wrong. Kirk answers a distress call, then they get frozen for not giving up their ship. The next point is lost here, since Spock and McCoy are clearly facing forward, but when they are frozen, McCoy is pointing at Spock. Rojan is on a really big power trip, as you can see. They never do find that central projector. That would have solved all their problems real quick. Here we learn the Kelvans started a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I got the impression that they have lost contact with the Kelvin homeworld and really have no clue if any of the other scouting parties found a planet. The takeover of the ship goes really quick. Lieutenant Uhura calls Red Alert, and everybody runs wildly around the bridge. This is Drea. I don't think we'll be seeing her anymore. Rojan says they will adjust the Enterprise engines to make the trip in only 300 years. Hopefully they'll make sure they get through the Great Barrier safely as well. Kalinda looks a little drunk. For having a generational ship, they don't seem to have a very big crew. Of course, they aren't really human either, and it is possible some of them died in the explosion of the ship. Rojan is advertising super strong condoms. Shout out to Kirk for wanting diplomacy first. But Rojan just wants to conquer. That's because they've been cooped up on that one ship for 300 years. It sounds like they want to take over the whole Federation. Here they mention they aren't really human and don't like the planet they're on. And they sound like cave dwellers. Makes me think of the Hortus right away. Spock is fascinated by metal poles, and he points out they may look human, but they aren't really human at all. They never really did look for the central projector, did they? This is unfortunate foreshadowing for someone in a red shirt. Kirk has to let out a really big fart. Spock tries to mind meld with the rock. Kalinda sends a mind probe back and makes Spock do a cartwheel. But it worked. Kalinda came in just in time for Kirk to knock her out with his famous judo chop and steal her transmitter. Unfortunately, they didn't get very far at all. Kirk is really upset now since he can't do a love scene with the new yeoman.
Aww.
Looks like Rojan is lonelier than we thought. Why can't he just grab that belt? He turned them into 2 giant sugar cubes. The next point is lost since a cube is supposed to represent a body without water. So what happened to the uniforms?
And those ballots after time, those after ballots. Yeah, it was open early.
And he doesn't know which one it is yet. And minus 1 more point because Rojan's hand is clean again.
I wanted to make sure that he, under the tape.
Lieutenant Shea survived, but Yeoman Thompson is now gone, and Kirk is like, man, I was gonna hook up with her tonight. The next point is lost for the captain's log talking down to the audience, since they think we forgot what happened before the commercials. And how is he recording this? See, he really did have the hots for her. Spock is totally out of it. Kirk asks if he is okay, but Spock says yes to the doctor. Spock describes his mind meld like it was an acid trip. In a moment, he's going to start singing Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. He was able to discover what the Kelvins really look like, giant centipedes or octopi. Makes you wonder. You never learn how long they can maintain that human form. Kirk decides the best way to stop them is with a turbolift and jam. That's what she said. Here is where we learn that a Vulcan vacation is a self-induced death trance, which makes them look sick to humans. But I will have to take a point here. If you're going to put yourself into a trance like this, it would be a good idea to sit down first. Even though it's standard practice for Vulcans, it still has McCoy a little nervous. The trick worked. Hanar fell for it.
Yes!
Back on the Enterprise, this is the first time you see McCoy roll a patient in on a stretcher. Shouldn't that be standard practice to have a stretcher waiting in the transporter room? Or better yet, an emergency transporter pad in sickbay itself. This is also the only time you see the bio bed has been removed for the emergency stretcher, which is the way it should be. But since this is a script writer's one episode change, I will have to take a point for a plot device. This is what he's really explained.
Has immediate postprandial upper abdominal distension.
Why is Nurse Chapel going to inform Rojan? Back on the planet, Rojan tells Kirk he is now in a BDSM relationship. Kirk now thinks he is a Kelvin. Just what is this comment referring to? Oh, she's talking about the flowers. Ironically, the Kelvins in Andromeda use memory tapes just like the humans of the early 1960s. Kirk quotes from Shakespeare, which is how the episode got its name. The next point is lost here since you can see a reflection in the corner. I was wrong, we do get to see her again. Warp 11 on the old scale was 1331 times the speed of light, but it's still going to take a while to get there. Kirk's thinking, the last time we did this, 2 of my crew got aluminum eyes and thought they were gods. This is a polite way of saying, we are plotting something against you. This is a bad idea, all 4 of them in the same room. If a Kelvin sees this, instant sugar cube. Here is another Spaceballs reference. This comment could also be an advertisement for an adult device. But it turns out they can't destroy it and come up with a plan to destroy the ship instead. The next point is lost since a turbolift only has 1 set of doors. While on the turbolift, Spock reveals his sexuality, but Scotty doesn't believe it. But Kirk knew something about it all along. 1 more point is lost for another mansplaining commercial break. Either the commercial breaks were extremely long in the 60s, or people were bigger channel surfers then, but they don't stand the test of time. They plunge closer to the barrier. Scotty has his finger on the button the whole time. Kirk goes through the options in his head.
The suspense is terrible.
He's gonna go this time.
I hope it'll last.
In the middle of it all, Kirk asks for poetry. Spock says all the sensors are negative, but the instruments are off the dial. Make up your mind. They are entering the barrier. There's so much to handle, Scotty and Spock both have to close their eyes. When they enter, the correct procedure is to throw yourself around the bridge while the camera shakes, and another point is lost, since this is reused footage of the Enterprise from the pilot. Now that they are safely through the barrier, Rojan decides to turn the non-essential personnel into sugar cubes so they don't get the coronavirus. Because of Kelvin fashion, it's a good thing the Kelvin women don't have hairy backs.
Hey, watch. The house being changed. By attention.
And -1 point here, since these crew members weren't on the bridge a few seconds ago. -1 more point since the clipboard didn't fall, it just ended up neatly on the floor. Rojan can't even look at the destruction he's done. The next point is lost, since they never do pick the cubes up off the floor. Anybody could step on them. And shouldn't the uniforms also be laying on the ground, and everyone reappear naked?
Yes!
So it turns out they knew about the plan to explode the ship. Doesn't this look like a scene from the Golden Girls? Kirk isn't satisfied with the meal. Haynar says pills are better than food. Dr. McCoy prescribes a healthy diet. And it turns out the way to fight their enemies is to feed them. This is why they just can't take them by surprise. Spock concludes that the aliens in human form haven't yet experienced human reactions, which gives McCoy a chance to make a silly joke. Scotty decides he will save the ship by getting them all drunk. Dr. McCoy injects an irritant into Haynar. We really don't know what he injects into him, but it definitely leaves him irritated. But is that legal? Of course, Kirk gets to make his move on Kalinda. He has such a rough job. He is going to show her how to apologize. If we're lucky, he will also explain that her human outfit is on backwards. Rojan walks in at just the right time. Kalinda tries apologizing to Rojan, but he doesn't quite get it, does he?
Aww.
Spock uses his experience bickering with McCoy to get under the skin of Rojan. Here comes the most important line of this episode in maybe Star Trek history, which will be repeated in The Next Generation and DS9, and maybe others, when Scotty says, "It is green." Kalinda discovers a mirror. She's turning into a real Earth woman after all. They have their first fight in 300 years. This next point is lost since this bottle of scotch is covered in dust on a super clean spaceship. Here is a rare shot of the three-dimensional checkers game. This is a rare time when Spock uses a human way to exit a room. Kalinda wants to apologize some more, and Kirk humbly obliges. I bet he wouldn't do that if he saw what she really looked like. The Kelvins are now acting like an irritated family. Rojan has resorted to sucking his thumb. And Spock really knows how to piss off an already pissed off human. Another point is lost for the fake turbolift doors. Scotty probably has the best decorated cabin, and he barely drinks Tomar under the table to get a scanner, then passes out himself. This scene is definitely plugged in for a comedy sketch. And now comes the big fight scene. In the fight, they knock over the 3D checkers, and I will have to take a point for an obvious stunt double. And of course, this here is done for more comic relief. After all, it is a family show. That's what she said. Spock and McCoy have now been taken over by Kelvins. The next point is lost since this episode ends too abruptly. Kirk tells Rojan his humanity is overtaking him, and they can help find a planet with help from the Federation, which is why he proposed in the first place. And another point is lost since these four and the Kelvins coming might want to keep their original form and find a planet that is more suitable for them, like Mustafar. But the fight ends and they all live happily ever after, except for Yeoman Thompson. And of course, Kalinda has to apologize to Rojan for a cute ending. He doesn't look so thrilled about it there. I hope they slow down first, they're going pretty fast. And there they go back to Earth in a rare shot. So, who are the Kelvins? Carl Bird played Lieutenant Shea, with 35 screen credits including The Flying Nun and the Logan's Run TV show. Leslie Dalton played Drea. He was also on The Guiding Light and Search for Tomorrow. Stuart Moss played Haynar and was also Tormalon in The Naked Time. He had a knack for photography and has 70 screen credits, including the original Westworld. Robert Fortier played Tomar, had 50 screen credits as well as being a sailor and fisherman, which is probably why you saw him as Bill Barnacle on Popeye. Warren Stevens played Rojan. With 160 screen credits to his name, he was a Marine pilot during World War II. Then the acting bug got to him, and he has played in both the original Twilight Zone and the 1985 version. Barbara Boucher played Kalinda, with 100 screen credits to her name. She was born in Czechoslovakia, took up modeling in the US, did some acting then, and finished her film career in Italy. She has even posed nude for the Italian edition of Penthouse.
Yes!
And Julie Cobb played Yeoman Leslie Thompson, the only female redshirt to die in the original series. She has 90 screen credits to her name, including Charles in Charge. She also had 4 husbands, one of which was James Cromwell from First Contact for 20 years. By Any Other Name gets a whopping score of 81%. And that's all for now. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists. Click that like button, the share button, and the subscribe button, and I will see you again soon.